So I know when mums start showing up at my house, that's a sign. One, fall is on the way, pumpkin spice lattes are available at Starbucks, and good grass is right around the corner. So I'm standing here in the front yard, and as you can see from the previous video that I did about 2 weeks ago, it's been almost 2 weeks to the day that I did the sand leveling project on this front lawn, where I came in and I top dressed about a 1/4 inch of sand across the entire lawn, and then I actually went in a little bit heavy on some areas that needed to be leveled. You can kind of see those areas behind me. Still got some filling in to do, but overall, the way this lawn looks compared to what it did 2 weeks ago when we did the sand leveling project, it is pulled a complete 180. It's almost back to 100%. So as a rule of thumb, when you're doing the top dressing, if you want to do a 1/4 inch top dressing on your lawn with the sand, you generally want to do about 1 square yard per 1,000 square feet in order to get a nice even coverage with your 1/4 inch sand cap when you come in to do your lawn. I had a little bit more brought in because I wanted to fill in some areas along the sidewalk that were low a little bit, and as you can see, some of those areas are struggling. Well, I guess I shouldn't say struggling, but they're filling in slowly but surely. And in that video I talked about putting in some seed, and so what I wanted to do is I wanted to incorporate a nurse crop into the bluegrass, because I was also going to add a little bit more bluegrass seed into this lawn, and I went with a Blue Bank Kentucky bluegrass by Landmark Seeds, and then I also put in a little bit of ryegrass. I did some Grand Slam perennial rye, and as it has started to come in, this lawn has really started to fill out quite a bit. I don't know what it is about the sand or the top dressing. If you're a turf pro and you can answer for me why the sand has such an effect on the bluegrass, on its ability to fill in after a top dressing, every time I have a turf injury on my lawn, I always bring in sand, and it's like, for some reason, the bluegrass just fills in so aggressively. Thing you'll notice too as you look into the canopy and a lot of the bare areas is sister plants from the existing bluegrass stand that's here. Once the grass is ready to throw down some roots and it's ready to spread, once the temperatures come down to they're more conducive to the bluegrass actually thriving, you're going to see a lot of sister plants kind of pop up by rhizomes that pop up into those areas, and they pop up out of the ground, and those begin to spread as well. So that's one of the great things about bluegrass, is it's self-healing, it's self-repairing, although it may not hold up quite as well to some certain conditions. Like a fescue would here in the Midwest, the bluegrass has some advantages over fescue in the way that you don't really have to get aggressive with overseeding it every year if you do have a little bit of damage. But overall, I think the way the grass handled the hot summer we had, even June was really hot, July was hot, and August was absolutely brutal. I'm actually pretty impressed with the way the bluegrass handled itself through all of those stages of the summer when everyone pretty much told me this grass was going to die. So an example of that is you look down the sidewalk here where this is really thin. This is where the heaviest sand was placed, and it's really starting to fill in fast. 1 from the overseed and 2 from the bluegrass spreading on its own. But this was something that I did on my own. This was a human error with some sulfentrazone and a 3-way herbicide that I applied trying to control a little bit of nutsedge. I got a little bit hot with my mix at the wrong time. When the peak temperatures were at its worst, the grass was really susceptible to turf injury, and basically I scorched this whole side of my lawn just trying to do something I've done in the past with the fescue, where I could go in with sulfentrazone. You can kind of get away with a little bit more abuse on the fescue grass when you're trying to control weeds and things like that in the summertime. The bluegrass seems to be a little bit more sensitive, but it does start to fill in on its own. In about a week or two, this will all be completely filled in. If this is performing anything like the middle of the lawn, I would expect within 2 weeks this entire section is going to look brand new again. So if you're planning to do a bluegrass renovation in the transition zone, specifically where I'm at in St. Louis, I want to say that I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, what are my thoughts on it? Is it possible? Obviously, as you look behind me, yes, it is possible. But I have to help you manage expectations in that you can't really beat up the bluegrass like you do with fescue. It's not as forgiving to human error, chemicals, and things of that nature. It is a little bit more temperamental when it comes to disease. It seems like the bluegrass, once you've got gray leaf spot, or you've got brown patch, or in my case, summer patch and necrotic ring spot, it's like overnight, it just checks out and dies. And that's something I wasn't used to. Fescue is a little bit more resilient when it comes to those sorts of things. So just something to be prepared for if you decide to go with Kentucky bluegrass and you want to do a, you know, inch and a half cut on it. Looks beautiful, but just be prepared that you're going to be playing defense for about 3 months out of the year.
Oh my, you got that hotter than a summertime in July. Time
I've been mowing consistently with the rotary using my super recycler, mainly because of the weight. The cow trimmer weighs like 150 pounds. It's kind of hard to maneuver around the heavy sand areas. So I've been using the rotary just to kind of take a trim off every couple of days just to make sure I'm encouraging growth. But looking down at the parts that are heavily sanded, you can see what I'm talking about. Really hard to move a heavy reel mower through this kind of material. I've been trying a couple of different types of seed coverings. As you can see, a lot of the baby grass is poking through. This is actually mushroom compost. And if you follow the channel, you know I'm not really a huge fan of peat moss. Peat moss tends to just wash away in piles after it rains the first time. So literally after a couple of days after you do your renovation, you do your overseed, it rains, all the peat moss tends to wash off. It's expensive and it's a lot of work and it's really messy. So I tried some of this mushroom compost, and obviously, as you can see here, there's a lot of debris in it. There's a lot of like mulch like this, which is not great if you're reel mowing. There's a lot of chunks in it. It tends to hold moisture really well, which is a good thing. It tends to clump up too, and that's the one issue that I had with it, is it was really clumpy, so I had to let it dry out in the sun for it seemed like an entire day before I used it. So that's another thing. Running the reel over this section would be a nightmare because of the weight. It would move the sand around and kind of mess with the seed that I have in here. I didn't want to dig it all out with the rear roller on the cow trimmer, but then also with the rotary, it just weighs a lot less. It's a lot more gentle in these areas. So until this fills in a little bit more, about another week or so, we can probably switch back to the reel mower. But for right now, I'm just going to use the rotary to kind of clean this area up. So now that we're heading into the fall season, it's time to take a look at some more inputs that we're going to be putting into the lawn. For you cool season folks that are watching, I'm looking at you. We're really going to ramp up the nitrogen inputs going into dormancy. And so a couple products that I'm going to be using. One that I've started to use just recently is the Lebanon ProScape. This is a 25010, 100% Mesa. If you don't know, that's a methylene urea. Methylene urea is a really good slow release source that gives you some good color, but it's also going to last about a 60 to 90 day release curve, really dependent on temperatures. So air temperatures and soil temperatures are going to play a lot into how the fertilizer breaks down in the soil, but it's going to give you a long lasting release curve so you don't have to apply so much. So this is something you can use. You can go in, throw down a pound of this in September. It's probably going to get you all the way through late October, almost into November, as far as that slow release curve. And then you could use something with a fast release, like an ammonium sulfate. This is a 2100. Ammonium sulfate is pretty much available anywhere fertilizer is sold. You can find it. This is a particular one I got by Lesco, and essentially this is a fast release that you would use. You can use it as a granular. You can also use it as a water soluble, but this is something I like to apply at really low rates, something like between, under a quarter pound or like a tenth of a pound per 1,000 square feet. That really gives you a nice pop of color. Another thing you can use, because we're not so concerned about nitrogen volatilization at this point in the year because temperatures are coming down, you can use a 46OL urea. That's something that you can put down like at a half pound every 4 weeks or so leading into dormancy. And because you're not worried so much about losing that volatilization of the nitrogen into the air, it's going to stay and be more stable in the ground, which means it's going to be more available to the grass plant. So those are all things that you can do for nitrogen sources leading into the fall. You have a lot of options. And then I also like to add a little bit of sulfate of potash as I go into dormancy. I usually do that in the spring before heading into summer dormancy or summer stress periods. And then coming out of summer, I like to do about a half pound of 0050 sulfate of potash in mid-September, and then do that again in mid-October, just to help with some of the stress conditioning that's going on as the grass recovers from the summer and then going into summer or winter dormancy. So those are a lot of the options that I like to use. As you look into fall, that's the time to start preparing for the most inputs that you're going to use on your cool season lawn. You really want to back off a little bit in the spring, and then fall is the time to really put the hammer down and get some nitrogen inputs into the lawn to help carry it through winter. And then when the lawn breaks in spring and it comes out of dormancy, it's going to look fantastic. So these are just some of the options that I use. You can use whatever sources you want to find. If you'd like to go to the big box store and buy fertilizer, by all means, go ahead and do that. These are some options that I like, and they last a really long time. These products I have in front of me are going to last me a couple of years on my 5,000 square foot lawn. Now, with all this nitrogen we're throwing down on the lawn, we're getting more rain. The temperatures are coming back down to where they need to be for the grass to thrive. we're going to be mowing a lot more as we kind of get back out of those summer temperatures and get into fall, which I think produces the best grass in my opinion. I think lawns look best in the fall going in. Probably around Thanksgiving, around this area is when they look the best. Sometime, you know, between Halloween and Thanksgiving, I think the lawns are just absolutely on fire. But we're going to be mowing a lot, and so back to mowing 2 and 3 times a week as we get into dormancy, because we're putting so much nutrients into the lawn this time of year. The temperatures, the rain, everything coming together at the right time. Your lawn's going to look fantastic. So if you've come out of summer dormancy, or maybe you've come out of summer with a lot of injury and your lawn doesn't look so good, the one thing I can preach to you is please be patient. Patience is the hardest thing to have in lawn care, because you think, I'm going to throw down all this fertilizer, I'm going to do all these things, I'm going to dethatch, I'm going to aerate, I'm going to add seed. And within a few weeks, you're looking at it and you're not happy with where it is. Just be patient. Trust me on that. It's going to come out and look like a shiny new penny once you've got a little bit of time invested, a little bit of water, a little bit of fertilizer, and some better temperatures are ahead. It's going to look a lot better. So this lawn looks really good right now. It can look better. I've got some spots that need to fill in, so I'm going to try and have some patience with it myself as we get into kind of the October time frame when things start to really pop and look good. So with all of that said, I've got more updates coming on this lawn as we document the Kentucky Bluegrass in St. Louis, Missouri lawn, which is definitely a challenge, but it has its joys. It also kind of has its pains. But with that, I really hope you guys enjoy the content here. I hope you took some things away from some of the recommendations I made on fertilizers going into the fall. I think I forgot to mention too, organics, probably not the best idea going into fall, because you need soil microbes and warm soils and warm temperatures to break those down. So those aren't going to be the best options for you. But if you like that content, if you like the tips that you saw here, don't forget, so subscribe to the channel first and foremost. Give me a like, leave me a comment in the comment section. With that, I really hope that you guys stick around, and I see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. See ya.